Oh my god, another Mean Girls video. Check out the other ones if you like this one or if you want to delve into some different topics. I touched on this briefly in my last video, but I think that this deserves a video of its own, and it's sexuality in Mean Girls. Now, believe it or not, sexuality is a pretty prevalent subject in Mean Girls, and that kind of exists throughout the entirety of the franchise. This isn't a video where I am proposing an argument about sexuality in Mean Girls. It is literally just me sitting down and looking at how it's evolved and how that's interesting, and even a little bit about fandom perception. Obviously, the way people view sexuality in the general public has changed greatly over the last 20 years, and this is very prevalent to how sexuality is handled in the different iterations of Mean Girls. In the original 2004 one, of course, the only actually gay character was Damien, and I think he was kind of just there because they wanted a man as like one of the main characters who like wasn't Aaron, and they were like, oh, a gay best friend. And that worked because that was like a very common thing to do in movies in 2004 that were like chick flicks, which I guess Mean Girls is a chick flick. And then in the musical version, Damien is once again, I think, the only canonical gay character. I think there might be like a background character or character who's mentioned who's gay but isn't necessarily gay. We have the very ambiguous Janice sexuality of being an alien. And then in the 2024 movie musical, we have a canonical lesbian Janice, a very strange backstory for Regina and Janice, which I'll get to in a moment. We obviously have Damien, who is gay as ever, and also, of course, in the 2024 movie, you have a bunch of like background people being gay. We kind of got like Damien a boyfriend fling thing, and we got Janice a girlfriend, which is fantastic. You know, she only deserves the best. Now, because it is more common to have queer characters in movies, it obviously makes sense that Mean Girls, which, you know, very much has this like basis of queerness, would have that. But Mean Girls itself is not like a queer story. It has very little to do with queerness. I mean, part of the main plot is really centered around a girl manipulating her way into getting a guy. Like, that is genuinely a massive plot of Mean Girls. Like, Aaron is so instrumental to the story, and he's just kind of there, you know? He's just there. And he turns and he smiles and, oh, my mom texted me. Like I mentioned before, Damien is the only original gay character. Like, he's the only canonical gay character in the first movie. Of course, people say Janice was, and obviously, like, in people's hearts, Janice is a lesbian, but she's not. She kisses Kevin. Anyway, Damien is the only canonical queer character in Mean Girls up until the 2024 movie, or at least the only canonical main character who's gay. And he's, you know, obviously falls into like this big stereotype of gay men, and especially in 2004 that was like a little bit of like the like fabulous gay stereotype. And of course he has conveyed this throughout, because who would Damien be if he wasn't the fabulous gay stereotype? Like, what would his character be? Editor Janderson voiceover here. I realized while looking for clips of Damien in both movies that he is significantly more the fabulous gay stereotype in the 2024 movie, much more than the 2004 movie, and I just wanted to note that I did realize that, and it was more like a personality thing and not so much he was committing to the bit thing in the 2004 movie. The entire movie, especially in 2004, dealt with these stereotypes, right? You had the tables that were assigned to the certain people, and like their little groups, right? Like the jocks and the preppies and the art kids and the plastics, and everything is very organized in that way, and therefore it makes perfect sense for Damien to be the stereotypical gay kid. It's not like a thing of saying like, oh, Damien is terrible representation, because he was never supposed to be good representation. He was supposed to be a stereotype. Like in a movie that deals in high school stereotypes, he too is a stereotype. While we're talking about Damien in 2004, let's talk about Janice in 2004. Now, the 2004 original movie is clearly the most straight Janice. She isn't gay, or at least if she is gay, I don't think she knows that. Somebody at some point said to me that, oh, well, you know, Regina only thought that she was a lesbian because she's Lebanese and she heard that wrong. No, I disagree. Like, the canonical reason that Regina gives, she gives this reason. She says that she didn't want to invite her to her pool party because it was all girls, and like that was inappropriate because she was a lesbian, because she was like obviously obsessed with Regina. Regina is basically standing there going, I am homophobic and I stand by this. If Janice is gay, she doesn't know it. I think that if she knows anything, she might be bisexual, but that's it. Because if she genuinely thinks that she's gay, I don't see why she wouldn't come out. Obviously, this is like an insane thing to say, because it's like, oh, why don't you come out? Yeah, there might be backlash. Yeah, you might be like in a place with like your parents, for example, where that wouldn't be very good, but your parents don't have to know what your friends know. Janice could come out and it wouldn't affect anyone's perception of her, because it's quite likely that people already think she's gay, either because Regina said so, because she's friends with Damien, who is too gay to function, or because, like, I don't know, she's an art kid and she kind of looks gay. She clearly has a little bit like a, oh, I could care less what people think or what's going on and things like that. So why would she care if people knew she was gay? Regardless, it was still pretty weird for Janice to end up with Kevin. I don't know. That was a weird choice, I think. Just no matter what her sexuality is. Oh well. Moving on. Now the musical feels a little gayer. Maybe this is because Janice doesn't end up with Kevin. Maybe this is because it's musical theater and musical theater feels inherently kind of gay. Or maybe it's because they're not as, I guess, worried about things and they're just kind of letting loose and they're not worrying too much about what people think about the characters. If Janice is gay or not, it really is up to interpretation. It was up to the actors, really, if they thought that Janice was gay or not, whether or not they were portraying her that way, or if they were going out there and saying, well, Janice is Janice, and that's who I'm playing. I don't have that much more to say about the musical in particular, because in 2024 we got canonical lesbian Janice, which came along with a very weird Regina backstory. So let's talk about that for a little while. I think that the backstory there, it's just very weird. I genuinely, I don't think I could tell you what happened there. Very confusing. I think Regina should be allowed to be homophobic. Now listen, maybe this is like a personal thing, and I just really liked how that backstory was done in the original, and the musical that is a little bit weird, but it was goofy and silly, but at least I know what happened. I have no clue what was going on in the 2024 movie. Like, I think I do, but I don't really do. It was a little bit convoluted, and I think it was just a way so that they wouldn't make Regina seem homophobic. I think that it would have been fine. Like, they could have literally just said, like, yeah, she didn't invite Janice to, like, her birthday party as a kid because Janice came out to her and then Regina was like, oh, I don't want to invite you to my birthday party anymore, sorry. And obviously that's like really sad and like, oh my god, she's homophobic. And then being like, and now Regina's like this big ally and like is denying all the allegations and like that she ever did that and said that I just didn't want to come to her birthday party. And I think that that would have been a really good way to establish the fact that, number one, people can change, and still be bad people. Like, you can still change, and by, like, instead of saying, like, yeah, I used to be homophobic, that sucked, denying this because, you know, she's still not a good person, and maybe being a good person would be owning up to the fact that you used to be wrong. And it's not like it's like, oh, kids these days aren't homophobic. They are! In canon, 2024, they would have been in high school at the same time as me. I think, like, they would be like 2 years younger than me in canon, maybe 2 or 3 years younger. Either way, they would have been in high school at the same time as me. Like, our years would have overlapped for at least a year or two. And when I was in middle school, this was something that I was struggling with, and I know that other people were struggling with too. And by pretending those, like, all the kids are, like, accepting these days isn't true, and people change. I cannot stress this enough, how much people can change, especially from when they're like, what, 11, 12 years old? Of course you're gonna say things that you regret. I think that that would have been a much better story. Just like, say, like, Regina says she never did this. Like, if you ask her, she didn't do it. She says she's just the biggest ally. And then being like, okay, well, you're a hypocrite. And I really stand by this. I think it would have been, like, much better. It would have been clearer. It would have been more concise. And it would have, like, shown the fact that you don't have to be homophobic at the moment to have done homophobic things in your past. Anyway, that's my rant about the backstory thing. I've been wanting to let that one out for a while. Also, in the 2024 one, I think Renee Rapp said that her Regina George, she likes thinking of her as gay. Now, obviously, I'm not entirely sure how to spin it, but, lesbian Regina George is a thing that exists in the world. Do I necessarily agree? No, but I think it makes more sense for some Reginas than others, and obviously it is based on who's playing her and how that might affect the way that you do it. For a character such as Regina to be deeply closeted makes a lot of sense, especially because in the 2024 version there was a little bit less of an emphasis put on her relationship with men, although it's still there. She is still having sex with men, but, you know, maybe she's just deeply repressed. And, you know, if she was deeply repressed, you know it would make sense? Homophobia in middle school. So, like I mentioned in my last video, if you watch that, that is just a lot of, like, mean lesbian stereotyping. Though I will say, Janice is less mean in the 2024 Mean Girls. Everyone is less mean, I believe, in the 2024 Mean Girls. I have a video about that. That's the first Mean Girls video I made, so you should check it out. The mean lesbian thing is really interesting. I think if Janice were to have been bisexual, that might have upset people for some reason, but nobody thinks that Janice is bisexual, and nobody thinks that Regina is bisexual. They only think that Katie is bisexual. Probably because, once again, a lot of the plot revolves around Katie wanting to get with a man. He's not worth it. He is not worth all of this. What was worth it? That, like, nice ending. Like, the endings are cute. Cute endings. Play montage. Yeah, it makes sense that you would, if you wanted her to be queer, you would make her bisexual, but why not everybody else, right? Like, is that biphobia? You just really want them to not like men? I'm very confused about why you can't just headcanon Regina or Janice or both to be bisexual. Obviously, in the 2024 movie, Janice is canonically gay, but in the other versions of Mean Girls, like, there's nothing there. You could just kind of do whatever. And I'm just kind of confused as to why being a lesbian is chosen over being bisexual. This isn't like a criticism of, like, fandom or anything like that. Fandom can do whatever it wants, but I am genuinely curious as to why this is the case. So if you know why people say lesbian Janice and lesbian Regina in opposition to them being bisexual, specifically before the 2024 movie, let me know. I'm assuming that for Janice it's probably because she has a little bit of more a stereotypical lesbian vibe, and she's put into the viewers' heads as a lesbian as soon as Regina says anything about it. So that might be part of the reason. Last but not least, does this matter? Does this video matter? No. I'm just someone on the internet talking about Mean Girls for the 5th time. It doesn't matter because they're fictional and it's not fantastic representation because, once again, a lot of it is based on stereotype because that is kind of what the story of Mean Girls is. It is stereotype on stereotype and working on dismantling those that are actively harmful. That would be a really interesting way to analyze Mean Girls, as like the point of Mean Girls is dismantling actively harmful stereotypes. I mean, that's not inaccurate. Having revelations. Anyway. It's fine. They're fictional. It's not great representation. It doesn't really matter. The story is being told and characters having sexuality doesn't actually make that much of an impact, especially because it's not a story about that. However, it absolutely does matter. Because of Regina and Janice's backstory in the original 2004 movie, that matters. It matters because they write that Damien is too gay to function, and that's not something that they should be saying because that's an inside joke. It does matter because someone is going to end up feeling represented by it. Whether it's good representation or not, it is a form of representation and people will end up feeling represented by it. They'll feel good about it because that's what a lot of movies do, is by giving you characters that have some sort of life breathed into them, you end up feeling like you're a part of this world and like you can connect to them. And by finding connection in characters, you will end up finding representation, whether or not it is officially good. Those are my thoughts about sexuality in Mean Girls. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the support on these Mean Girls videos in particular. I just have so many thoughts for some reason. Check out the other Mean Girl videos if you haven't already. If you have, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye for now. And I wonder